Brace yourself, people, for this story, because we've heard a lot of these tales before. These are kind of precursors into what Canada is transforming into. You see what's happening in the UK, you see what's happening in European countries, you see what's happening in Australia, you see what's happening all around the world. And Canada's no exception to the crackdown of so-called hate speech. Now, I've made it very clear that it is literally overreaching authoritarian fascism to the bone in the fact that they're cracking down on something that is a human emotion. You can't legislate on hatred. It doesn't make sense. It's illogical to crack down on something that some person or other people might deem as hatred, but other people might not consider that hatred. It's impossible to legislate that. It'd be like legislating on happiness or joy or sadness. But they're doing it anyway. They're doing it anyway. And especially with this particular story, some people are having conflicting views. So, a North Bay, Ontario man, was sentenced to jail for Holocaust denial and anti-Semitic hate speech. So, again, these are precursors to what Canada's transforming itself into. Now that the introduction of Bill C-8 and Bill C-9 are going to the House of Commons for first readings, we could see a lot more of this happening. And they're using the Holocaust and anti-Semitic as one of the pillars of attacking and demonizing Canadians. And people will look at that and go, well, Holocaust denial, that's a pretty big one that, people find, spiteful and disgusting and vile and whatnot. Does that mean this guy deserves jail sentences for questioning a historic event? Does this mean this guy deserves to be punished by criminal prosecution for making social media posts that criticizes an historic event? No, I don't believe that, because the ability of free speech, one of the things in the First Amendment, one of the things in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, is to grant people the ability to form an opinion based on these circumstances, even if it is the Holocaust, even if people do think that it's anti-Semitic. That's what one of the things of being principled on free speech is about. So it says, marking a legal milestone in Canada, a North Bay man has been convicted and jailed for using social media to incite hatred against Jews and deny the atrocities of the Holocaust. For the first time in Canadian history, this man is being criminally prosecuted for Holocaust denial and what they claim is anti-Semitic content on social media. In a historic legal decision, let's make this a bit bigger. In a historic legal decision, a North Bay man has been sentenced to 9 months in jail after being found guilty of promoting hatred and denying the Holocaust through dozens of disturbing social media posts and videos promoting hate and violence against the Jewish community. It marks the first ever conviction in a Canadian court for Holocaust denial, according to Crown prosecutors. The conviction was a result of a 7-month-long investigation into a hate crime by the North Bay Police Services Criminal Investigation Station. Kenneth Paulin, 51, was sentenced to 9 months in jail and 2 years of probation on September 18th for the willful promotion of hate against Jewish people and the willful promotion of anti-Semitism by condoning, denying, or downplaying the Holocaust, according to a release from the Friends of Simon Wiesenthal Center for Holocaust Studies. So, an NGO is coordinating with law enforcement and the government to crack down on Canadian citizens for social media content. This is, I can't even express the words on how messed up this is. And going forward, how dangerous it's going to be for society. That we can't have conversations, that we're prosecuting people for social media posts. This is the precursor to what's eventually going to happen in Canada. if we start passing bills like Bill C-8 and Bill C-9, which I'm going to get into later on, about what that means for the state of Canada, for the fact that people would not be able to have conversations. The organization shares lessons from the Holocaust and advocates for human rights and combating anti-Semitism hate. Holland was arrested and charged on Friday, June 20th, following the investigation into his anti-Semitic online content. His posts vilified the Jewish community, promoted blood libels and conspiracy theories, incited hate and violence against Jews, and repeatedly mocked and denied the Holocaust, says the release. Well, if you looked at recent events, if you look at what people are saying online, what people are considering blood libel or, vilifying Jewish people, it is purposely propagandizing and demonizing actual investigative rhetoric or observancies over the atrocities that are being committed when it comes to the Gaza genocide. People that are commenting on this, people that are showcasing and highlighting, all the information, all the acclaims, all the video footage of the atrocities that are committing in Gaza right now through this genocide. They're going after and demonizing people, and we know what's happening with the United States in particular, with Netanyahu going to pay a bunch of influencers to further demonize other people as being anti-Semitic. So this is, again, all this is a scapegoat. All this is a scapegoat to demonize people from having engaging thoughts and conversations. Again, you don't have to agree with this guy's statement about the Holocaust and say that it's vile or hatred or whatnot. But the purpose of free speech is a principle that, regardless of how people feel about that speech, his rights are protected and guaranteed the same way that you and I are guaranteed in those rights. We're allowed to have conversations. We're allowed to have statements that people disagree with or find vilifying or hateful. That's the point of free speech. If everyone agrees on the same statement, there would be no point for having these laws, for having the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, for having the First Amendment. You protect the things you find disgusting. You protect the things that you find deplorable, because it's not a violation of criminal code. He's not targeting people with violent rhetoric, but he's making statements on social media. Holland's posts include claims that Jews are demons, the greatest mass murderers in human history, to blame for every American who falls, and responsible for almost 100% of the world's problems. He also expressed support for a worldwide Jew hunt and declared that anti-Semitism is the only thing that could save the world, among countless other hateful posts and videos. Again, these are words on social media. If he conducted an actual crime and actually violently attacked someone based on these statements, then yes, I would consider that a hate crime. Yes, I would consider that prosecution. But all we know is the fact that he made statements on social media. That's all we know about this. Did he actually pursue any action about this? We don't know. They're not telling you that. So why are we prosecuting people for making statements on social media about this? Most disturbing, he minimized and denied the Holocaust, including a video he titled, "Their victim card gets permanently denied as the Holocaust hoax is exposed," and by sharing a post that read, 6 million didn't happen, but it should have. In a community impact statement submitted to the court in August, FSWC Senior Director of Policy and Advocacy Jamie Kersner Roberts called Pollan's contact an orchestrated effort to spread hatred, to normalize anti-Semitism, and to encourage others to view Jews as enemies to be mocked, hunted, and destroyed. As I stated this before, the biggest promoters of hatred, discrimination, and misinformation is the government itself. They're the ones that are demonizing and purposely raging people to be further divided. They are the ones that are promoting the most hatred and misinformation. But yet, they're also the ones that are the lawmakers that are trying to crack down on individuals on what they post on social media, which is a dangerous, slippery slope. Again, putting this aside, you can find this awful. You can find this horrifying. But if you allow for this, if you give excuse to say, well, this guy should be, prosecuted and sent to prison for social media posts because he denies the Holocaust, you're giving a gateway for more authoritarianism to crouch down in other directions. Imagine if someone commented on social media about questioning the 9/11 narrative or JFK or any of the other big historical events. Should they also be prosecuted and demonized because they're misinforming, because they're spreading hatred around? What if it was about Arabs? What if it was about gay people? Do we follow the same route? Do we allow this to continue? It's crazy. And this gives a gateway to that slippery slope, because they will further change the goalpost and extend it to demonize anybody as spreading hate speech. That's why these laws are so awful. And it's going to further make society in Canada and around the world more and more dangerous. Because the way to combat hate speech is not by locking people in prison. That's going to add more hatred to society. But the way to stop hatred and hate online is to add more speech. It's to correct the record, come with a conclusive argument to say this guy is misinforming or to say this guy is incorrect. You don't take him to prison and lock him away and expect him to be on good behavior, because that's going to add more hatred to society. I advise people this. Where have you seen in human history that censorship and locking people away, arresting them for their speech and their thoughts, how good is that for human society? Where at any point has that worked in favorable of human society? It hasn't. It hasn't. People revolted. People got angered. People went against the powers that be that were trying to put censorship onto them, because they knew that how damaging this was, that it wasn't for safety. It wasn't for your safety or concerns. It was for them. It was so they can control the narrative. So here's just some examples of this. This guy, stevehansen.ca, says Canadian from North Bay was sentenced to 9 months in jail and 2 years probation for promotion of hatred and promotion of anti-Semitism. He is the first person to be convicted under subsection 2.1 of A319 for Holocaust denial. So it's a criminal offense. It's a criminal offense to deny the Holocaust or even question, even be concerned, even investigate. That's not saying you deny it. That's saying that maybe there's some misleading numbers. Maybe something is not factually correct about the official narrative. And people have made that assumption because we've been lied to numerous times about historical events. Again, we're not being told the truth about 9/11. We're not being told the truth about JFK. We're not being told the truth about Charlie Kirk. So it brings to suspicion, it brings to question on what other historical events we've been lied to, and whether or not we should be further investigating, exploring into detail, bringing up new facts that maybe contradict the official narrative. That's kind of the point of this. That's why you add more speech, you add more of the conversation. You don't silence someone when you find them, hateful or bigoted or whatever the case may be. You add more to the conversation to try to either denounce what they're saying and try to correct the record with your own conclusions, or you add to the conversation and you build upon that measure to prove whether their case is right or wrong. That's why we have freedom of speech. That's why we have this, folks. And if we didn't have it, human society would have been plummeted years ago. So this guy, Aaron Petman, says North Bay, Ontario man guilty of hate crimes and anti-Semitic posts, jailed for 9 months. But remember, Israel supporters can publicly wish a gruesome death for Greta Thunberg with complete immunity. That's right. The people that are spreading the loudest anti-Semitism are the Zionists themselves. They're the ones that are spreading the most violence. They're the ones spreading the most hatred on social media. And they're showing an example of this. Look at this. This is from a woman by the name of Vivian Berkovici. How do you say that? Berkovici. And she's retweeting the Israeli foreign minister talking about the flotilla. And she says, I mean, I get why they intercepted Great and Friends. Can't even spell the name right. It's Greta and Friends. But I kind of wish that an Israeli Navy had just let them carry into the stand with their savage Hamas comrades one-way ticket. So that's not direct violence, but there's far more gruesome examples of actually directing violent assaults or violent threats towards an individual, which that is illegal because it's already in the criminal code. That's why we don't need extra steps or extra legislation or laws passed to protect us from hate speech, because already in criminal code, you cannot directly make assault claims or go directly and pursue a violent threat towards someone. That's already in the criminal code. That's already in play. So having more of these hate speech laws and cracking down on people for posts they made on social media, that's nothing but authoritarianism. That's nothing more than the government overreaching and controlling the narrative and demonizing people that step outside the line. And concerning the fact that there's far worse speech out there, far worse, gruesome, insidious material that people have spewed. Even I don't want them prosecuted because those are words online. Because on principle, that is just their thoughts. That is just free speech. If they actually committed the atrocity, if that followed through to actually promoting violence, then yes, I'd say investigate further prosecution. But that's not what we saw here. Matt Strauss, who's an MP in Parliament, he says you need to be very concerned about Bill C-8. So we talked about this. Bill C-8, that's the new cybersecurity bill that is on its first reading here. Says it allows Melanie Jolie to kick anyone off the internet with no trial or no warrant. Worse, you will not be allowed to say you've been kicked off. This is the Emergency Measures Act on steroids, only permanent and secret. So, what Bill C-8 allows is that anyone that they believe is spreading hate or misinformation online, they can then contact their service providers to disable their internet service and cut off their utilities. Allow for the government to crack down on internet providers and go after the users if they deem are spreading misinformation or hatred online. That is violation of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Because people make the argument that private companies can do whatever they want. The government is pressuring the private company to do it. If the government is pressuring a private company to attack and demonize their own users. That no longer has legality. That no longer is the excuse of a private company doing what it wants. That is the government overriding civil liberties to crack down on you. And we have seen many examples of this. In the UK, in Germany, they have chancellors laughing about all the people they locked up in prison. Australia, they wanted to do a concentration camp of Australians that disagreed with the COVID narrative. We're seeing people in the United States being deported for writing op-eds that are critical of Israel. And now this. This is the Western democracy. This is supposed to be a sovereign nation. And here we are cracking down our own citizens because of posts they're making on the internet. How can we say we're a sovereign democracy with all this going on? How can we say that? How can anyone allude that Canada, the United States, the UK, all these countries that are secular, that are free, that are a welcoming society, we're multicultural, we're diverse? How can you say that when this is going on? Here's Canada Proud. Under Bill C-8, Mark Carney, the Prime Minister, can ban you from the internet, ban you from talking about how you were banned from the internet, and force you to give up personal information relevant to why they ban you from the internet. So this gives law enforcement the ability to go into your house without a warrant and search and seize your property, take acquisition of your of any personal data relevant to the government cracking down on your speech. This is a level North Korea couldn't even get to. At this point, North Korea and China are better off than this. And it's happening in Canada. It's happening in Canada. While people still promote it as a sovereign nation and worried about Donald Trump taking over his 51st state, I'm worried about this. I'm worried about the fact that a globalized central banker, a private equity master, is demonizing our Canadian population because of wrongthink. That's more concerning to me than what Donald Trump tweets about on Truth Social about the 51st state. This is already a threat to our sovereignty. It's a threat to the Canadian population. And people are just okay with this. There's a lot of people that are just okay with this. Because, there's a lot of mean things on the internet and someone should take control of it. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Here's another MP. This is Dr. Leslyn Lewis. In the House of Commons, she made a statement about Bill C-9 isn't about fighting hate. So Bill C-8 allows the government to cut off your internet. Bill C-9, this is the new hate speech bill that will prosecute people for life sentences, if possible, if you're doing wrong thing. And she says, Bill C-9 isn't about fighting hate. It's about giving Ottawa more power to silence our voices. Existing laws already criminalizes genocide, hate propaganda, symbols, and vandalism. C-9 removes Attorney General oversight, replaces objective hatred with a vague emotional test, and risks criminalizing dissent. This isn't protection. It's politicized power. Canadians need real protection, not laws that weaponize free speech. So I find it fascinating that we are implementing laws. We are implementing crackdowns on people posting on social media and cracking down on misinformation and hatred from words on the internet as violent crimes in the country continue to explode because we are not cracking down on criminal behavior, actual violent criminal behavior in large cities. We're not doing that, but we're going to crack down on people spreading misinformation online and deeming it as hatred. It is bizarre, folks. And here's what she said in the House of Commons regarding this bill, which is on its first reading. So they just announced this bill. It's in the House of Commons up for a debate. This is what she said in response to this. Take a listen.
Beginning with my first objection to Bill C-9, I find it quite perplexing that Christian hate was not even mentioned in the bill. In recent years, we have seen alarming hate-motivated attacks, including burning and vandalism of churches across Canada. Just last week, a century...
That's a great point. That's a great point. I didn't even cut on to that till she mentioned that. Yeah, all these hate bills don't mention about Christian hate. People that are demonizing, churchgoers. Again, you can agree or disagree with that population or disagree with anyone on their religious views or whatnot. That's the, being human. You're allowed to disagree or agree with anything. But if you're going to have a hate speech bill and attack people for violent behavior, none of it mentioned about Christian hate. None of it mentioned about the churches being caught on fire by arsonists. None of that ever got addressed.
The old Ukrainian Orthodox Church in Edmonton was burned to the ground. As we witness the record number of sacred spaces being destroyed, Christians have noticed the government's silence. Congregations have been left in fear, and people of faith feeling abandoned by their government's lack of enforcement of existing laws. In this context, it is shocking that a bill about combating hate is completely silent on the rise of Christian hate. The government's press release mentions anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, homophobia, and transphobia, yet it makes no mention of the rise of hate crimes towards Christians. This bill does not add new protections for worshipers. Instead, it expands state powers by removing the legal safeguards and watering down the definition of hate speech. It paves a path towards politicizing restrictions on speech. It even risks criminalizing dissent to what some would call thought crimes. We must exercise caution. Once such powers are granted to the government, they can be weaponized by any government against its critics.
And that's exactly the intent of all this. So while they make this claim that it's supposed to protect people from, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, transphobia, homophobia, protecting kids from cyberbullying, I've heard that excuse before. None of it actually does that. None of it actually does that. You're protecting kids from the government, the same government that is brutalizing kids, that wants to take over your child's aspiration, that wants to take over as authority figure to your children and not allow parents to decide, what their children are allowed to see. It does the exact opposite. It adds more hatred. It adds more division. It sows more into our society that's already fractured. But it gives the government and the powers that be impunity from criticism, impunity from anyone criticizing them, which is the whole reason you would have a hate speech law, which is the whole reason you would have Bill C-9 and Bill C-8. It's not to protect people. It's there to protect power from critics, which is something that for the entire civilization, human civilization, has had this long-standing battle for. That censorship is there purposely to protect powerful interest. Not there for you. It's not there for anyone else. It's not even there for the specific groups that they're claiming they're protecting. It's to protect the power. Protect the powerful interests from criticism. And that's what she's addressing here.
The existing criminal code already covers the most serious offenses. Section 318 makes it a crime to advocate or promote genocide. Section 319 criminalizes public incitement of hatred and willful promotion of hate and speech that would lead to a breach of peace. These provisions already strike a careful balance between protecting Canadians from true hate and safeguarding freedom of expression. Bill C-9 attempts to redefine hatred so vaguely that it risks capturing legitimate debate.
Again, that's another tactic of theirs. You're going to water down what it means to be hateful, what it means to spread hate and misinformation, because there's no clear definition. It's done intentionally because the government can deem anything as hateful and spreading misinformation. Again, they could crack you down and punish you if you question the narratives around COVID, if they question you about Ukraine, if they question about Justin Trudeau implementing the Emergency Powers Act. They could criminalize you for that. You're spreading hatred. You're demonizing people. That's what's so dangerous about this. And while you have your opinions on a gentleman stating his ideas on the Holocaust and making anti-Semitic tropes, the point of the matter is that criminalizing him is leading down a dangerous slope that now they can pursue any criminal action against anybody they deem as villainous, they deem as spreading hatred, they deem as a traitor, as a terrorist. You're a keyboard terrorist for spreading information online that we disagree with. That's what makes this very, very dangerous and why I speak highly about this. Because if we don't have freedom of speech, we don't have the ability to communicate effectively in a civil discourse with among all sorts of people, then there's real no point to humanity. There's real no point to our existence if we lose all that. And it seems like a lot of the Western world is heading down that direction. Table Salt pointing out this kind of hilarious point is that under this new C9 bill, that the Liberals' C9 bill hate crime makes it a hate crime if you commit any crime against national origin. Meaning the Liberals could end up in jail for 2 years if they do too many elbows ups and harass an American. So under the Liberals' hate speech bill, their little PSYOP, their elbows up initiative, could be deemed hate speech because you're attacking a nationality, you're attacking Americans. Anything that's against American culture and American values, they could deem that as hate speech. Would they consider that? Probably not. Because that elbows up initiative worked for Mark Carney to get selected as prime minister. That was a PSYOP created by the liberal establishment. But that's funny. That's funny. Under their own bill, the elbows up movement would be a hate crime. Because it's going against a nationality. It's going against a group of people in a population. That's hilarious. And just to show people, I just want to show, this is happening all the time in UK. And this is happening more and more frequently in a lot of parts of the world. And I want to remind people that if they pass Bill C9 and they pass Bill C8, you're going to see a lot more of this happening. You're going to see a lot more of these incidents happening among many Canadians. And all it's going to do is add more hate to the fire. It's going to add more fuel to the fire. British police capture and arrest an elderly man because some of his social media posts caused someone anxiety. So police are showing up to an elderly man's house to arrest him because a viewer quickly looked at his post and got anxious. I'm going to guess that anxious somebody is someone in Parliament. I have a hunch that it's someone in government that got anxious. Because normal people, if they see something that they disagree with, they don't look at it. They scroll on. They move to something else. They change the channel. That's not normal people, normal behavior in human society. But the government won't allow that. So they're going to send the cops to penalize an elderly man. Take a look at this.
The Hampshire police would realise how ridiculous this is. It is. Look, I'm telling you to come to this.
What did it need to come to?
Tell us why you escalated it to this level. Because I don't understand. I posted something that he posted. You come to arrest me. You don't arrest him. Why has it come to this? Why am I in cuffs? Because there's something he shared, then I shared.
Because someone has been caused, obviously, anxiety based upon your social media post. That's
not his.
Why you've been arrested.
No.
So the only excuse they can give this guy that just asked him, why am I being arrested? Doesn't make sense why you're doing this. And the cop just says, well, we've been told that it gave someone anxiety. That's why we're going to your house, taking your information, going directly to your house and arresting you without a warrant, search and seize his property, and crack him down for a social media post that somebody had anxiety over. They won't tell you who it is. They won't tell you why they thought it was anxious. They won't even tell what post it was. But that is an example of what's going to pursue in Canada if people don't wake up and realize how threatening this is. How Bill C-8 and Bill C-9 are the worst case possible for this country. That we're already so divided, we're already so tense, we're already so politically bipolar, if you will. If you're on one side, then you're the other. If you're not on this side, you're the other side, and everybody's yelling at each other. Do you think that's silencing people and threatening a jail sentence to crack down on their social media posts and wrongthink? Do you think that's going to stop the hatred? Do you think that's going to cool things down? Oh, it's going to, tone down people? No. It's going to make people more angry, more violent, and more extreme. And we're seeing that. We're seeing that in a lot of different countries, and Canada's no exception because Canada is being controlled by an outside force the same way the UK and many others. This is a global-wide issue. This is not just Canada implementing this kind of law. It's censorship on a global scale. This is New World Order. Kind of just Luciferic measures that they're trying to censor and demonize people for their speech. And they're trying to change society. They're trying to change people's behaviors. Remember Larry Fink mentioned about that. We got to change people's behaviors. That's where wokeism came from. That's where DEIs come from. We got to change people's behaviors, their perception. We can't allow for people to engage as individuals with functioning brains and hearts and come up with their own conclusions. We can't have people function their own opinions. We have to mandate that they fall into line, they go with the agenda, or we're going to demonize you. We're going to attack you. We're going to villainize you. We're going to turn you into a criminal for having the wrong idea, for having the wrong think. Absolutely, absolutely diabolically disgusting. And the fact that Canada is pushing through this, it's already in first reading. And luckily there are some MPs that are pushing back on this. But there's a lot of people that seem to be okay with this. That seem to be okay that, there's a lot of, mean things online. And what if some crazy lunatic goes up and searches awful things or goes onto the dark web and children with cyberbullying coming up with idiotic excuses to back this. And just as you heard Leslie Lula say, we already have laws. We already have laws that don't allow for people to make violent threats. It's already under the criminal code. So why are they doing this? Why did they need this? Why did they need these overreaching, authoritarian, George Orwell style control onto people? It's not because of safety. It's because they want to control the narrative. They want to control society and culture. And by they, I don't even mean the Canadian government. I mean the people that truly function these countries, which is the WEF, the billionaire class, the elites, the global cabal that constantly want us separated, divided, making the case to add censorship rules, to add digital IDs, to enforce these restrictions onto people, because they want the peasants, us, to be in control in the hands of these evil, malice monsters. And that's what we're seeing here. It's not there to protect you. It's there to be against you. And anyone with functioning brain and a heart to look at this and be outraged at the direction of where Canada's heading towards, where UK is heading towards, where France and Germany is heading towards, even when the United States is heading towards. Because they're all also implementing hate speech laws. And they're doing it on the name of Charlie Kirk, of all people. It's absolutely disgusting.